Good evening, everybody. We are live and on the air. I am Christina Evans. I handle business development for Cascadia, and y'all can introduce yourselves as well. Go ahead.
I'm Kelly Johnston, and I'm one of the other miracle workers here at Cascadia, and I handle seller performance issues.
And I'm Emily, and I handle coaching and content and customer service questions, things of that nature.
You're the general miracle worker. Isn't that kind of cool?
I would agree. Kelly, we were going to have Belle on tonight, and I think she's having connectivity issues. So we're going to do the best that we can with the kind of general agenda that we had in mind, as well as I believe we got a question after the last session.
Yes.
And we wanted to present that and use that as a quick point that we're really unscripted. We try to have a generally good idea what we're going to talk about when we do these sessions based on trends, what's happening in the e-commerce, Amazon space. However, it's not being scripted, unscripted. We want you to ask questions. If we're sitting here talking about something and it's not necessarily what's on your mind, feel free to pose the question. We'll fit it in where we can, and if it doesn't really fit anything, we'll answer it anyway, because that's what a Hangout is about. It's you going, oh, wait, I thought of something that may not necessarily have anything to do with anything else. So
exactly.
Go ahead, Kel.
With what? With the question from last week?
Got from
Jennifer.
Yes.
Sorry, I had to think about that for a second. So Jennifer attended our webinar last week and had this great question because, as you probably have figured out being on Amazon, the help files are not always helpful. And there can be seemingly contradictory information in different places on the website, which make it hard. And her question was, there was some confusion whether or not you could use discount codes as a form of promotion on Amazon, or did that violate terms of service? And where I think Jennifer got hung up, totally understandably, is that there have been the recent changes with the review terms of service, which specifically were drawn up to avoid people using discount codes to incentivize buyers to leave reviews. They're separate things, but it's really, really easy to conflate them. And so, as I told Jennifer, Amazon wants you to use promotions. In fact, there's a help file on how to do that. If you search promotion in Amazon search bar, you will get a help file on how to set one up. Please use them. What you don't want to do is use them in a way to entice buyers to leave you positive seller reviews or positive product reviews. That is prohibited by the rules in several places. Do not do it. End of story. Don't do it. The other thing you don't want to do is create a discount code on your own website and use that to drive buyers to your website and provide that through Amazon's channels. That is considered diverting or a call to action, which is also not okay. So lastly, the other thing I don't want you to do, because this will get you in trouble, collect buyer information to use for a mailing list or to solicit them to go buy on your website. Totally not okay per Amazon's transaction rules. You are not supposed to use any buyer information that you receive in the course of an order for anything other than that order the buyer's placed with you. So in other words, the whole gist of Jennifer's question is, how can I do all these things and be safe? Read the TOS, don't violate the TOS, and just make sure that you're staying within the rules. And if you're not sure, ask these kinds of questions. Use your mentors, use the Facebook groups that are out there at your own peril, because sometimes you get bad advice, but it's not a bad idea to post that in a public forum. You can get a lot of good info. And then come talk to us, because that's what we do.
And we actually just got another question as you were talking about that. Thanks, Kelly. They put stickers on all of their boxes that include the website. I didn't say anything about going to my website, but it's on my packaging. Is that all right?
That is a fantastic question. So
Yeah.
here's how diverting, aka calls to action, have evolved. When I first started with seller performance in 2004, you would get nailed for any use of any URL ever under any circumstances, which was clearly not a very friendly policy. So Amazon realized that they needed to allow sellers to provide customer service related contact information. So they changed the rules informally so that you necessarily as a seller didn't see it, but from an enforcement perspective, we were no longer doing this. If you included a phone number and said, hey buyer, thanks for buying my widget. If there's a problem with your widget, please call our customer service line at 1-800-WIDGETS-RE-US. That would never get you in trouble because that's not a call to action. That is a customer service action. The other alternative is, hey, thanks for buying your widget. If you have any problems or need to register your widget for a lifetime free warranty, please go to www.widgetsrus.com. You would be okay in that circumstance as well. The other example just cited is just my URL on the box. Should not generate any problems. However, there's always a risk somebody could report it, and a young gun investigator who may not be as experienced as the rest of the team decides they're going to warn you for it. So while I can't promise you there's no risk, technically that falls within the terms of service and the way the policy is written. The whole policy is based on calling that buyer to action, trying to drive traffic to your website in a way that is designed to engender sales. That is really the core of that. So you should be fine, but there's still a risk, no matter how infinitesimal, that it could result in a warning.
Well done.
Thank you. Christina, are you still with us?
That's why we have you around, Kelly. You know lots of stuff.
I do. I'm like a living historical fossil.
You can also think up fake website
performance.
names.
Huh?
You can also think up fake website names really fast.
I know. It's a stupid gift to have. I don't know why I have it. It really breaks my heart. No, I love being able to call up these memories because it reminds me of how much Amazon has grown, which is obvious to everyone outside as well. But thinking about how we were 5 people in the US and I think 4 people in Britain, and that's it in 2004. It's an extremely long time ago, and I do feel rather fossil-like when I contemplate how things have changed. It's terrible. I'm old. It's all right. Christina, are you still with us? Because I don't hear you at all. I see her. Yep, your sound is off, Christina. I can see your pretty face, but I hear nothing coming from you. Oh, she may actually be stuck. Well,
you mentioned that you're feeling kind of like a fossil, though, because when we were talking about what things to discuss on tonight's Hangout, the item for me to kind of think about and discuss was a safety program and how to develop a proper safety program, which
yes.
reaches way back into the past. Into my past. And so but that was an interesting thing to think about too, because especially in light of what we do now with product development, the packaging of things, and there's a lot of thought that needs to go into the safety of the products that you sell, the safety of the product itself, and then also the packaging, but really the product itself is what you should be concerned about in terms of what you would do if there were a safety issue brought to your attention. Because recently Amazon has started sending out notices that your product is being investigated for some kind of safety incident. So I was doing some thinking about how people can prevent that and also respond to that and have an idea of a plan of action before something happens. And I think one of the most important things is to just simply ask yourself the question, how can my product fail? How can it fail through unforeseeable misuse? And how can it just fail outright? And so in thinking about that unforeseeable misuse, foreseeable misuse. I just wrote a blog about it too. So I'm going back and forth.
I know those words get all tangled up after a while.
Foreseeable misuse is any way that you know your customer is going to misuse your product. So the garlic press is always a great example of that. You put 1 clove of garlic into the garlic press, but a lot of people, myself included, sometimes put 2 or 3. because one clove isn't enough. But what ends up happening with some cheaper ones is the little hinge, the pins will break off and fly everywhere. And that's terrible. You don't want that to happen. So one way that you can stop that happening is to warn people about it everywhere. Don't put 3 cloves of garlic in this thing, you'll bust it. And so by giving that warning, you're giving yourself an extra layer of protection against liability should something happen with your product. And so just to look at it from that perspective of, oh, I need to inform people of ways that I know my product will fail. And then you also have to think about ways that your product is possibly already failing by looking at reviews, by seeking customer feedback, by checking in with people after the purchase. How did you like your thing? Oh, well, it broke. How did it break? What happened? And see if you can compile a list of things that are starting to look like something actually is failing on your product. You know, a hinge on a folding step stool or something. If you're starting to see that the hinge just fails constantly and it's being used by a child, it's not exceeding, you know, a 200 weight or 200 pound weight limit or something, then you really need to take a look at your product and take it down now. If you see that before Amazon does, take it down and investigate. I think that a lot of sellers don't pay enough attention to the reviews and what their customers are actually saying, and that there are patterns in there and they leave things up and Amazon finds them.
Yep. And that dovetails into the next part of that question that we were kind of kicking around is, why is this a problem on Amazon? Well, precisely because they have started this safety program, which began in May. But for that exact reason that you just mentioned, sellers are they're not doing it. They haven't been doing it. And now that Amazon is scrutinizing products for safety, if you do not have a dedicated, flushed out, living, breathing safety program within your entity, whether you are a reseller, a private label seller, or a combination of all three, you are setting yourself up for massive, massive problems. Case in point, I had a client recently who has private label products, and they were by and large doing well, except for a couple. And the two that he had issues with, one had kind of a mechanical type problem, along with just general breakage, and the other that was having issues with an electrical component. It didn't run the whole device, but it was an important part of that device. And so what was happening is both were having issues and failures and breakages and whatnot, and he got a safety warning. And we had a really hard time getting those products reinstated. And one of the things that he did not have in place was a triage program to deal with these sorts of incoming contacts from buyers. Buyers were telling him, hey, this burned out, or this smoked, or this handle broke when I tried to insert it into this other piece of plastic. And so we created a program for him to start so that anything like that was immediately triaged in such a way that it would allow him to track the issues, report it to his manufacturer that he's working with, make sure the buyer was handled, all of the things that it needs to touch on, because it's not enough to just recognize the problem and do all of that. You have to have a very specific linear kind of trajectory. Now that will look different from business to business, depending on how big you are, what the product is, all of those things will vary. I can't give you a formula on how that will work, but for most sellers, I think it needs to follow kind of this basic path. And Emily, tell me if you think I'm off base with this. Once you determine there's a problem, pause that listing. Like you were saying, don't just continue to sell it. Work with that buyer, get them resolved. Check your records. Do you have previous complaints about this particular issue? If you show that you're getting a certain percentage of problems, like 3%, 10%, whatever it is that you need to decide for your threshold, pull that stuff from the fulfillment centers if you are shipping FBA, and do a root cause analysis on those products in your hands and with your manufacturer to figure out what exactly is wrong. Correct those problems. You may need to relabel things. You may need to change your ASIN. You may need to create better instructions. There's a whole host of potential actions that can come from those things. But if you don't have a way to actually set that in motion instead of scrambling, which is what most sellers do, problems. End of story. Amazon will kick you off the platform.
Yeah, and I think that this is just a good thought process for any seller to have. You will probably be met with some kind of thing like this at some point during your selling career. And it's just good to put some thought into it and to know what you would do. Know that Amazon requires you to be proactive, and that being proactive does mean putting some thought into this now, and then also reactive in that if they have to talk to you, that you have intelligent and relevant things to say back, and not,
Yes.
well, I bought it at liquidation, so I don't know about it.
Yes. No, and that's the other part of that. That's the other part of that, because if you don't have a safety program in place, not only are you placing your buyers at risk, and you are certainly setting yourself up for all kinds of liability that you don't necessarily want, you are not prepared to talk to Amazon. I cannot tell you how many times I have worked on a safety incident for a client, and they literally had no idea what the root cause of the problem was. None. Now, Amazon is at fault in part because they are not giving sellers guidance on where to look. And to be fair, there is a lot of data that you can potentially sort through. However, private label sellers, I'm looking at you. If you have made this product, if you have designed it and loved it and created it with all your little happy, sparkly thoughts to make it real, you should know what could go wrong with it. It's like the example that you used with the garlic press. If you designed it to only hold one clove, but you nowhere tell buyers anywhere that if they shove 12 in there, that they're going to suddenly have exploding pins in their face, that is on you, because it's very conceivable. I do it too. I mean, I like garlic, so I use lots of garlic, and I am going to be that idiot that tries to shove a whole clove in there when it should really just be, one little piece. So, if you are not doing these things, you are creating problems for yourself. You will not be able to answer to Amazon, and you're going to be an unhappy person when they suspend your account or take you completely off the platform because you have not thought these things through. I know that it's not natural for most people who are in this very entrepreneurial space to do things that are risk-based, but the reality is that this world has changed so much. E-commerce has changed so much. You can't ignore these things at the expense of everything else. Not that you should only focus on them, but if you're not thinking about them as you're getting started, you're going to be too late in pondering them once you've already kind of started your process in your business.
So we have a couple of questions, and we have a Xiangping.
I see that. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. Do you want to hit those questions real quick, Emily? I can't see them, unfortunately, or I would tackle them.
Okay. I have a customer who clearly did not read the instructions, really dumb, but when I told Amazon that the instructions were on the product, I think the customer ate too much. They keep sending me the same message over and over saying safety incident. What do I do? They don't seem like they read.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you they do read. I know they don't seem like they do, but they do. Part of the problem is that they're very limited in the responses they can give you. However, there is more to the problem than what you just said. And I'm saying that not to be a snarky pain in the butt. I'm saying it because there's likely more than one issue happening. You have to do a root cause analysis, and you have to look at everything. And when I say everything, I mean product reviews, particularly if this is your ASIN and not something you're reselling. You need to look at all of your metrics and data. You need to look at your buyer complaints. You need to look at any messages you've received, and you need to look at it in a very detached, methodical, scientific way and admit that something is a problem, even if it seems like it's not. If you really need more help and you're not getting a response, this is what we do. Come see me. I would be happy to help you with this, but obviously I can't give too much more of a synopsis without actually seeing the product and looking at it to tell you, hey, here's your problem. Keep in mind, you have a finite number of chances to get this right. If you continue to send them a substandard plan of action, you will not get access to this product back, and they will stop talking to you about it entirely. Do not wait. Come talk to us and get a little bit more of a feel for where you actually are at.
And then one more.
One more.
I have contacted Amazon about a review that I believe to be malicious and have asked to have it removed. The result is that the review has not been removed, but it has been moved from being the 5th review listed to the more prominent position of being the 2nd review listed.
Well, so if you reported it to the communities team and they have opted not to do anything, you do have the option of reporting it to seller performance, although that's really not the best venue because they would probably kick it back to communities. The other thing you can do is contact seller support and see if they would be willing to escalate it. Your third option, and I consider this the nuclear option and one that it could work, it may not work. I'm going to couch this by saying I have seen a lot of it not work lately, so I'm a little bit, I don't know, not gun shy. I just don't necessarily think it's as effective. But you can write to Jeff Bezos, and his email literally is jeff@amazon.com. It's always been that way. And you need to explain what's going on. And I always say emphasize the problem that it's causing you. Why it's a problem and how you would like it to be fixed, and do it politely, and you will see some sort of result. Now, what they will do with that information, I'm not sure. But it definitely should be brought to someone's attention. You could try, again, seller support. If you have not tried that venue, if you have tried everything else that you can think of and nothing works, then I would write to Jeff, but be prepared to wait. They have been very slow to reply lately.
Okay.
All right. Are we ready to talk to Mrs. Shumping about manufacturing?
I think so.
All right. Let's get to it.
Are you there, girl?
I think she is. You may have muted yourself. We can't hear you at all.
Now it's okay?
Oh,
There you are.
Okay.
You sound very good and very clear. So thank you for joining us tonight. Do you want to tell the audience here watching a little bit about what you do for Cascadia?
I'm doing sourcing, you know, when you want to find the new products, or you have the products but you want to change the factory, so I'm there.
Oh, great. Well, and I don't get to work with you very often, so I'm really glad I get to chat with you today. And I know I probably have some clients that would love to talk with you. And if any of those clients are watching, this is Belle, also known as Shumping. Please contact her for sourcing because we love her and she does great work. So let's get to it. Emily, what do you want to start with?
Let's see. I actually don't know.
Well, you deal a lot with some of our private label clients that
I do.
are sourcing products. How does that interact? Like what you do for those clients, how does that interact with what Belle does?
So Belle supports me hugely. I work with Belle all the time. She is basically the first person in line when my clients come to me and want to source a product. So they start working with her immediately, and typically what she'll do is find 10 or so, maybe a few less than that, factories that create the product that the client is looking to manufacture. And then she does everything from talk to them about colors and how many the minimum order is that they have to do. She helps negotiate on their behalf for better pricing and different structures to our contracts. What else does she do? I guess that's really it in a nutshell. I guess she's just really valuable to me, particularly because she knows so much about factories, and so much of the knowledge is just over the years of having worked with all of these factories. She just knows things off the top of her head that are great. So packaging, she's really good at helping to figure out what packaging to put there. And again, working with the factory to make sure that communications are clear. Yeah, she does lots for us.
You do a lot.
Without her.
Belle, what do you think is one of the biggest challenges for someone who is just starting to develop their product and getting to you at the sourcing phase? I imagine that there can be a lot of questions that a potential client might have.
I mean, the challenge for me from the customer, you know, the best thing I need to know is the material. You know, the material can be classified to many. For example, for stainless steel, it can be like 401, 304, 403, 201, you know, lots of different themes. And there are different quantity, different price. Of course, their test standard is different. So it's very important for customer to inform me which material they want. Otherwise, you know, when I source the product for them, maybe it's not what they want. And if they want to change the material, that means I need to start it again.
Yeah, you know, actually, that is a good, it's just a good thought when you are thinking of products that you want to make and things you want to manufacture. It is very important to think about every single aspect of it, every material that goes into it, all the buckles, all of the, you know, whatever it is for your thing.
Yes.
Because I think that projects go a lot smoother, and I know Belle would agree with this, when customers have a very clear vision of what it is that they want. I feel like sometimes we talk to people and they don't really know. They have a basic idea of what they want, but it hasn't really been fleshed out. And so that makes Belle's job a little bit more difficult. And there's also greater potential for miscommunication when lots of options start getting thrown around, and, oh, I don't know, let's go back to this one, let's go back, you know. Lots of back and forth, very difficult. And, yeah, it's just, I know it makes Belle's life more difficult when things like the material, which I would think would be part of your concept and your dream for the product, sometimes isn't decided on until later.
Yeah, exactly.
I would think that would be very difficult, and for you particularly, Belle, if you're dealing with clients who don't necessarily know what they want. They probably should, but maybe they don't. Do you feel like you help them in your job to define that a little bit more sometimes, to make it a little bit more clear if they don't know what they want?
Yes, there are, you know, there are some different ways can help customer to figure out what they want. For example, the first themes, the customer can define which level they want. For example, like a stainless steel, 304, that's the best quantity. Of course, the price is the most expensive. But if the product use this 304, that means the quality is very, very good. So that means the product level is high level. So if the customer don't know which material they want, so they can know which customer or which consumers I want to sell. If they want to sell to high level consumers, so it's best for them to use 304. But if they said, I just want to sell some lower person, the lower cost person, so they can use 201. So that's cheaper.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's a good point too, is that I think sometimes sellers and clients that we work with go into their sourcing and manufacturing phase thinking that certain things are going to be more expensive than others, and they're wrong, and then they get a shock that the process is, oh, this is $5 per yard. I thought it was $1. And that's probably something that you have to manage a lot. I think is maybe client expectation on cost, and that could probably be a difficult conversation sometimes when a client thinks that it should be this and it's really something higher.
Yeah. And the second themes, you know, the customer can decide which design or which style they want. For example, for the same pen, we just use pen as example. It can be plastic, it can be stainless steel, it can be metal. So you know, use different material, the style is totally different. So the customer will think, I want this style is plastic, I want that style is metal, because metal looks much better. So they can decide by the style.
Yeah.
And then they also can decide by what kind of test requirements they want to do, because which material has different test standard. If they want to, for example, they want to pass ETL for steamer, or like plug is for UL plug. So you know, the material is different, the test standard is different.
Right. So, that actually brings up a really good example, Belle, that Rachel wanted us to talk about, and it's somebody that we've seen examples of this in the past, but if you have somebody that has a product and they don't test or inspect it before they bring it to market, and then Amazon identifies a problem, but you as the, let's say we're the client doing this, and then the client goes and creates a new ASIN or somehow relists the product on Amazon, that can cause extreme hardship for you as a seller, like immediate suspension, because that is a huge violation to create something, be told it's not suitable to be listed, and then creating it again. And you know, in certain examples, you might find that types of plastic or fittings or grommets are not of high quality because you didn't test or inspect prior to getting it created. And you've been talking a little bit about textiles. Maybe the sizing's off. Maybe the material isn't the right material for the application. And so then you get 20% of your products returned and all sorts of stuff that come up. When you have a client like that in that situation, Belle, is there something that you would do at the beginning? Like if they came to you and said, hey, this garden tool I created is failing and I got in trouble and now I'm back on, how do I make this a better product? Where would you start with that?
You know, for example, for the picnic bag, we just talked about the project. The customer want to buy a picnic bag, and this we also use the stainless steel as the example. The material for 304 and 201, they can't pass the soil test. So the customer want to want to make sure it can pass soil spray test. So it can be used 403. 304 can pass that test, but the price is more expensive. So that means if you placed the order, you didn't inform the factory, but the factory already made that product. So when you shipped it to Amazon, it's totally be returned because it can't pass that test. So for when to tell the factory, I think when you place the order, you have to indicate what kind of test you have to pass, because the factory will order the material from their sub factories with the specific materials you want. They will they have QC and QA department to test and make sure it can pass that material, and then they use that material to produce. So you'll be totally pass.
I bet you've seen a lot of people in that situation, haven't you, where they brought a product to market without those proper specifications and testing, and then they have to come and kind of start the whole sourcing and manufacturing part over. Yeah, and I bet that's a lot of work for you, isn't it, when you've had somebody who did it wrong the first time?
Yeah, no. You know, for sometimes maybe it can be fixed, but most of the time it can't be fixed. It just return. So that's big loss.
Yeah. Oh, I would think. I think it's probably very uncommon that a product that is not designed quite right or with the wrong materials, perhaps, you can't usually re-engineer that. You just have to sort of start over, don't you?
Yeah. Most time I need to start it over, but sometimes, you know, if it's a small pass or just, you know, is little themes, maybe it can be rework. But you know, for any products, for rework, it can't be as good as the original, so it's not a good idea.
Right. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Emily, did you have anything else that we wanted to ask our fine guest with all this knowledge and experience with? We have so much we could probably talk about.
I know. No, I just am grateful that we have Belle with us.
Yeah. I think the last thing that we want to talk about tonight, though, and this kind of covers something that Belle has been talking about, is customer perception is the end-all, be-all on Amazon. Regulatory compliance is not enough. You as a seller really have to be prepared, make yourself in the position to predict quality and safety concerns, but that perception issue is going to be a huge thing. And it's not just the perception of is your product safe? It's your perception of your service. It's your perception of how you present the product. Are you spelling things well? Are you presenting data that makes sense? Are you targeting to the right people? I mean, buyers can tell this. So perception is, as they say, 9/10 of the law, and on Amazon is absolutely king. To use an example from my own life that I think it'll make you laugh, and I'm not trying to shame the seller who I won't identify, but I order stuff from Amazon all the time, and it was a small item, like kind of like this notebook here, a little thinner, and it came in an envelope, but not a padded envelope, which is what I would expect. It came in like, I don't know, just like a regular envelope, and I opened it up to try to figure out what they had used to protect this little item, and it was a birthday card.
Was it a used birthday card?
No, but it was a religious birthday card.
Interesting. That's interesting.
Unsigned, but they were nice enough to include the return label, which I was like, wow, okay. I guess you ran out of packing material. What happened here? So my point in saying this is, while I got a huge laugh out of it, and I'm not in any way going to penalize the seller, there are buyers that would be really upset about getting something like that. It looks really unprofessional. It looks like you're not prepared. It looks like you don't know what you're doing. It's just not the right way to handle things. And that's probably the most amusing thing I've had happen with a third-party label or third-party sale in recent times. But that perception factor matters. There will be buyers that would not react the way that I did and give you all kinds of grief and make your life miserable, and you don't need that. So think about your perception. Yes, the regulatory compliance angle that we've been hammering on, that Belle's been talking about with don't do your product the wrong way, do it the right way, so get that testing and inspection and all that stuff beforehand so that you don't need her to go untangle your mess. What Emily was talking about, building a safety program, those are all important. And what I was saying about talking to Amazon and having your data in front of you, all that's important. But think about your perception. If buyers start seeing reviews that a product is breaking, that it's on fire, that it causes shocks, that it cuts people, that it makes them sick, other people are going to be internalizing that. Buyers that you never even see, people that are just browsing the website, they're going to look, they're going to see that, and it's going to damage your brand and your ability to grow. Conversely, and Emily can speak to this ad nauseum, and I'm sure we should do a podcast about this or a webinar about this. If you're not treating your buyers the way that Amazon wants to treat its buyers, you are doing them a disservice. You need to have the best possible customer service platform that you can. You need to make sure that you are treating them as golden as Amazon treats its buyers, because that is the key to success. It's not just being compliant. It's not just having a great product. It's not just doing all the things that you're supposed to do. It's how you treat those buyers. And I think that's a massive, massive thing that is going to be key on Amazon going forward. You will not be able to differentiate yourself with just a product. You know, yeah. I mean, Emily, you've worked in customer service, especially at Amazon, for so long. Mm-hmm. I would say probably longer than almost any of us. That probably is one of the biggest things that we're seeing now, isn't it? Is that service is really differentiating some sellers from other sellers.
Yeah, it really does. And you know, back to the safety thing, and treating your customers like they're the most important thing. Amazon has a policy where anyone in the company can stop a product, take it off the website immediately. That is just standard policy. If a safety issue has been discovered with any product, any person, the janitor can take the product down. And the reason why is because they care about their customers in that way too. And so that's what I'm saying with the safety program is, you know, the same, treat your customers that way, like they're golden too, even though that's a hard pill to swallow. It's important that you keep their safety in mind, just as you keep your service in mind. It's just important. Amazon places it very highly above a lot of other things. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's huge. Well, I think we're about out of time, and I know there's one other thing that we wanted to talk about, and I'm sorry, Christina, that your mic isn't working. I love technology, except when it doesn't work. It's a real pain. It's so painful. I know that we have a couple of pending questions. One of them is about taxes. I live and have my incorporation is registered in Canada and I'm selling on Amazon. I do FBA only. At what point should I start applying sales tax on my product? And based on what state is the taxation should be? Wow, this is all stuff that I can't even begin to answer, but you probably sooner than later.
Actually, somebody just above said, hello, hey, fellow webinar watcher. I use TaxJar to manage that.
Yeah, there we go. TaxJar. Thank you.
TaxJar.
TaxJar is wonderful. The people there are awesome. They can help you. Go talk to them. But just from a general point, I would say if you're just starting out and you're making a very, very low dollar amount of money, like under 500 US or Canada, you probably don't need to start working about sales tax, but go to the experts. TaxJar will be able to get there for you and help you. There's another question about Alibaba. Yeah.
Oh,
I don't.
actually, Christina answered that. I only read part of her answer, but I thought it was really good.
Okay, well, I'm not going to touch on that then because I can't see the chat for some reason because, like I said, technical problems is the theme of the night here. But if she's already put in an answer, awesome. I'm not going to get into that. But my personal feeling is that Alibaba is not a valid business plan, at least not long term. And lastly, Cascadia has a new phone number. As you may or may not know, we are based out of Seattle, Washington, the great Emerald City. That new number is 206-202-0222. That's a lot of twos. Let me repeat that. 206-202-0222. That's our new number. It's active, I believe, 9 to 5. You can leave messages. You can get directed to all sorts of people. It's fantastic. So we're more available than ever. Just what you need, right, to be able to get a hold of us and for us to be able to talk to you. So we've covered a lot of ground tonight, you guys. Thank you. And I'm very sorry that, again, we've had slip-ups and technical issues. We're doing our best here, but, you know, we're not engineers, darn it. It's not how it works. Belle, thank you for joining us. And I'm sure that we'll have you come visit us again and, you know, feel free to dispense more sourcing and manufacturing knowledge when that happens.
Thank you, Val.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina, for getting us started. I see you waving. I appreciate that. Emily, thank you also very much for your wonderful, wonderful, wonderful insights. You're the best. And we'll see you guys next week.
Sounds great.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Take it easy, guys.
Night.
Bye, Belle. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.